All right, our number of attendees has started leveling off, so we'll get started. This is SUNYLA session C5, Lightning Talks. I'm Rebecca Hewitt from sunny Utica, New York at SUNY Polytechnic Institute. And welcome all of you. I hope you all enjoyed that phenomenal keynote address from Katrina. She was absolutely the top choice for keynote speaker of our organizing committee, and I couldn't be happier about the way it worked out. She was phenomenal. The only thing that would have made it better was seeing her in person. So lightning talks at this conference have a 10-minute time limit, excuse me. So we will be cutting folks off after 10 minutes. What will happen is that I'll introduce our speakers in order. So beginning with Sarah and going on to Ryan, Angela, and Tony, I'll come in and give a brief introduction, and they'll give their talk for 10 minutes. And we'll save question and answers until the end of all 4 talks. So that way we make sure that everyone has the opportunity to get through their full 10-minute talk before we break in with questions. So if you have a question while someone is speaking, go ahead and enter it in the Q&A, okay? The Q&A, not the chat. And once we've heard from all 4 of our speakers, we will go through that Q&A, and I will read all the questions aloud so they can be recorded in the recording. All right, so with all that being said, we will start with our first lightning round presenter, and she is Sarah Romeo of Hudson Valley Community College. Sarah is currently the OER, Open Educational Resources Librarian, and is an adjunct member of the English faculty at Hudson Valley. She earned her MLIS at the University of Alberta, and also has an MA from the University at Albany. Sarah, would you like to unmute yourself and share your screen? Right. And I will hit my iPhone timer as soon as you begin.
Great. Okay. And I'm assuming you can see it?
It hasn't come up yet, but let's give it a sec.
Let's go back.
Oh, your camera is, well, we don't want, there we go.
Okay, great.
All right, so I'm gonna start.
All right, great. Hi, everyone. This is my first SUNYLA, so I'm very excited to be here. I'll be sharing a little about how we've worked to support our OER sustainability by educating our faculty on Creative Commons licensing. So very quickly, a little background about OER at HVCC. Prior to 2017, OER was used on a very informal basis, just sort of by faculty who were in the know with open pedagogy and things like that. We formalized our initiative in 2017 when we received the state funding, which we then used to incentivize faculty adoption. We used the funding to encourage faculty to attend professional development workshops to learn how to find and identify OER, and then we provided them with an additional stipend for any courses they chose to convert. And by 2019, we'd converted over 100 course sections to OER, and in fall 2019 alone, we saved students over $250,000 in textbook costs. So we were obviously very happy with that success. So, of course, we wanted to know how we could expand on this success. We were faced with a bit of stagnation. We felt like we'd reached our core OER fan base by that point. The attendance at our workshops was starting to decline as we sort of, ran out of people who were new to the program. So we wanted to re-engage sort of our converted people, and they were ready to move beyond what we were offering. They were interested in compiling their own OER and authoring their own OER, and we weren't quite there yet in terms of assisting them. So the main roadblock for us was, how do we encourage open licensing when our faculty copyright ownership is a bit nebulous? I know this isn't an issue at some of the bigger universities, but at our community college, the the faculty union is independent, and their contract wording is a little strange on that. So we worked with one of our librarians who had a background in law and our library director to craft an open access policy. So here's the language. Obviously, I'm not going to read it. It was approved by our academic senate in February 2019 and the president in March 2019. And I'll just pull out a little bit of the language here. We really wanted to emphasize the fact that Hudson Valley does permit faculty and staff to assign Creative Commons licensings to their academic materials, and that they are encouraged to do so as part of our OER initiative. So this was important in terms of creating a foundation that we felt comfortable moving forward in encouraging the use of open licensing. So that was a big step forward for us. And then now that that was approved, now what? How do we get people to buy into doing this and to understand what it means? So we decided to use Creative Commons as sort of our common ground, and we decided to start with offering professional development to our faculty. I called the first one our trial run. We just called it Creative Commons, the Basics. We did the workshop through our Center for Effective Teaching. And it was very basic. It introduced attendees to basic copyright law and Creative Commons licenses and what they were. Unfortunately, it wasn't a super success. We only had 4 attendees, but the feedback was still valuable. They felt we really needed to rebrand the session. They thought our description didn't really tie into the OER initiative, and they felt that Creative Commons wasn't really something that was widely known terminology, and so it seemed a bit abstract. So then we moved on to our Creative Commons Workshop Redux, as I like to call it, and we really rebuilt the session from the ground up. We rebranded it to be called How to Openly Share Your Faculty Creative Materials Using Creative Commons, which isn't as fun sounding, but it definitely rang more of a bell with our faculty. And in the description, we really emphasized the tie-in to our OER initiative. We revamped the presentation, focusing on open pedagogy and the ethos of open education, as well as the background of where Creative Commons came from. And we incorporated it into our annual faculty workshop days in order to maximize attendance, because there are no classes that day, so faculty could attend. So some key resources we used in preparing for our workshop were the book Creative Commons for Educators and Librarians, which is free. I linked to that in my slide. I also personally took the Copyright for Educators and Librarians course on Coursera, also free. And those were really valuable in wrapping my brain around it personally. We heavily used handouts from SUNY OER services. As you'll see, I put one in the bottom right corner of the slide. There's a whole bunch of Creative Commons related ones that you can get from them and print and hand out. We also used the Creative Commons website license chooser, which is an interactive tool on their website. We demonstrated that several times in the workshop, and we came armed with a set of examples to apply the licenses to live in the workshop, such as PowerPoints, worksheets, and other educational things. Our outcomes and reactions from this session: we maxed out our session seating, which was a good sign. We immediately got a lot of follow-up from the attendees, from the tutors in our learning centers, asking for additional handouts to give to colleagues. We had people send in some of their materials to ask what license they thought was best. So we got a lot of great post-workshop feedback. We also had a really good discussion in the workshop itself that showed a true understanding of the benefits of using the Creative Commons licenses for our faculty, in terms of them actually providing more ownership to their creations. I know sometimes people think that Creative Commons licenses sort of give up rights to your work, but in this case, it actually gives them more ownership, particularly for the adjuncts who move between different institutions. They felt if they did this, they could take their materials with them a little more comfortably. And of course, overall assessment is still in the works. We did our workshop in the last week of February, so you all know that the moment March hit, we were not too focused on mining data from how this worked out. So I had hoped to have a little more to share, but unfortunately that's still in the works. So finally, going forward, we just want to continue with our continuing education for both ourselves and our faculty. We want to keep using open education and open pedagogy as buzzwords to attract the faculty. They're very attuned to those now, and continue to tie it into our OER initiative. We still plan to reoffer the workshop, hopefully in fall 2020. partner more with our Center for Effective Teaching in doing so, and finally, practice what we preach at the library in terms of putting Creative Commons licensing on our LibGuides and our teaching materials, because we're still not all there yet. And that's all I have for you. With that, I will pass to the next presenter.
Thank you so much, Sarah. Our next presenter is Ryan Perry from the Central Library Resources Council. Ryan is the CLRC's Digital Collections librarian, and he works with organizations in Central New York to help them digitize and make accessible their cultural heritage collections. And I can attest to his excellence in that respect because he has helped me in several projects in that area. He also serves as the statewide project coordinator for the New York Heritage Digital Collections. Ryan has a master's in history from the University of Rochester and an MS LIS from Syracuse University. Ryan's going to talk to us about expanding the reach of our digital collections. Thank you, Ryan.
Thank you. Let me just bring it up. All right. Thank you. So as Rebecca mentioned, I will be speaking today on how you all can expand the reach of your digital collections. I intend this to be a quick introduction for the digital repositories offered by the Empire State Library Network. And this will probably be a review for many of you who already participate, but hopefully at the end, I'll have a chance to give a couple of bonus slides on like stuff you might not already know. So there'll be something for everybody. So first of all, what are the benefits of contributing to a statewide repository? First of all, you can expand the reach of your digital collections beyond your campus communities. We have a global audience for our repositories, so it kind of never hurts to have your materials in more places. You can also help to contribute to the broader understanding of New York State history. So by placing your materials alongside other similar materials from other institutions, you have this wonderful opportunity to kind of build that contextual information and you know, build into that broader narrative in a way that it's hard to do in your own individual repositories. And finally, and perhaps most importantly, during our current times, you can avoid the hassle and the significant financial burden of running your own repositories. So by working with the Empire State Library Network, you can take advantage of our economies of scale and our expertise, and you don't have to reinvent the wheel and do it on your own, essentially. So next, well, actually, first of all, I want to make one more point on this slide. Together, we can really work to focus on providing access to the wonderful materials that you're spending all of your time and resources collecting and digitizing in some cases. And there's really a great opportunity here for us to work together. And next, I'm going to go through the three main repositories that are offered by the Empire State Library Network. First of all, the New York State Historic Newspapers Project is, as the name suggests, a statewide repository for local newspapers. And to give a sense of scale, all 62 counties in New York State are represented in the repository. And this is over 800, or actually exactly 820 newspaper titles at the moment, and over 10.5 million pages. So this is a very large repository, and users have the benefit of being able to do full text search across titles from across the entire state. So this really plays into that point I was making earlier about putting your stuff alongside other things that will provide context. And also this repository is very popular with genealogists, and other users that may not take the extra step of going through all of your individual repositories. So next, New York Heritage Digital Collections is the repository, as Rebecca mentioned, that I am at the helm of. This repository is essentially the landing ground for everything that isn't newspapers, all the other cultural heritage materials that we have in the state. 8 out of the 9 library councils participate in New York Heritage. Metro has Digital Cultural of Metropolitan New York, which is available to their members in New York City and Westchester County. But even without New York City, we have 366 contributing institutions and just under 300,000 digital objects. If you look at the page level numbers for this, it's actually quite higher. So, you know, all the pages of yearbooks, et cetera. We also have an exhibit platform that we've been building up over the last few years. We're hoping to make this available to contributors soon, but you can check it out on our website. In the meantime, we have a few exhibits up. Okay, and third and finally, Empire Archival Discovery Cooperative is a statewide repository for finding aids. This has been a project that's been in development for a number of years, so it's kind of moving slowly into more of a finalized project. So quantifying it is probably not doing it justice. It's a one-stop shop though. So we have tools to build finding aids. We're storing these finding aids, and then we're also making them available and searchable to our end users. There's a couple updates I just want to mention briefly here. We are in the process of rebuilding our form tool for creating the finding aids. We're working with Metro's Archipelago platform to build a brand new tool for the creating EAD finding aids. We're also working on expanding our ability to harvest collections, harvest finding aids from those institutions that are already creating EAD. So if you already have a large cache of EAD finding aids, you can work with us to have them display in our repository as well as your own. And then finally, we're working on improving the user experience. We're rebuilding the web display. The image I have on the side of this slide is an example of kind of our beta of that effort. And so with all of this, how can the library councils help you navigate all of this? First of all, we are available to help in selecting relevant materials for these repositories. We're also available to consult on digitization, metadata, and pretty much any aspect of these projects. You would reach out to your local library council and have them help you with this. Some councils, but not all, offer grants to fund digitization metadata creation. And also some councils provide equipment to be loaned out. I won't make promises on behalf of my colleagues, and each council serves their members in different ways, but it's worth looking into. You can look on their websites and also just reach out and ask those questions. We're here to help, so please reach out to us. Many of you are members already, so it's not like you're paying something extra for this work. And my quick bonus slides here for those of you who that was all review. Many of you may not be aware, but New York State Historic Newspapers has a dashboard where you can view usage statistics for all the titles in their repository on a monthly basis. So this URL, which I will add into the chat after my session is over, is available to browse through those, and also old newsletters and stuff like that. And New York State Historic New York Heritage, we have some new reports that we've developed over the last little bit. The first is a statewide traffic report that shows our overall demographics and traffic to the website, and kind of gives you a sense of who's visiting and using New York Heritage. And then we also have this more granular traffic report where you can go into your institution and look at your landing pages and your page views and content DM and see what's being used and see trends over time. We don't have a fancy dashboard for this yet, but if you are interested in seeing this, reach out to your local library council representative, and we would be happy to point you toward these reports. And that is it. Thank you so much. If you have questions that we don't have time to answer in our question and answer at the end of this session, please don't hesitate to email me at rperry@clrc.org. Again, thank you. I look forward to hearing the rest of the presentations.
Ryan, you're much too modest. That really looked like a fancy dashboard to me.
Yeah, we just don't have it all in one place yet. That's all. We don't have I can't point you to a fancy short link.
Okay, thank you so much. Our next presenter is Angela Rhodes. Angela is with us from SUNY Morrisville, where she is the Systems and Electronic Resources Librarian. She's been in the SUNY system for 13 years, working in systems, electronic resources, databases, and cataloging. Angela is going to talk to us about making local notes easy, setting up controlled vocabulary to fill your local fields. Thank you so much, Angela.
Thanks, Rebecca. Let me share my screen and make sure to share my sound.
We can hear you just fine, and there's your
Wonderful.
screen.
Okay. Wonderful. Okay, so I'm going to be giving a technical presentation within SUNY's LMS Ex Libris Alma. So if you are not a techie person, feel free to look at the ceiling for a little bit. What I'm going to be doing is going through the process of creating local notes within Ex Libris Alma. So I was ambitious in thinking I could show this in 10 minutes, so I'm going to get right into it. Okay, to set the stage, oops. Whoa, why is it auto? To set the stage, I'll introduce the problem that prompted me to delve into our Alma configuration. Before Ex Libris Alma, we were creating local notes that were kind of unique to our collection. We were receiving a bank of materials through grant money, and so we were using macros within OCLC connection to create these repetitive notes. However, after Ex Libris Alma, those local notes had to be added without our connection macros, and they had to be added at an institution or IZ level. By hand, these notes had massive potential for human error, and the notes were time-consuming for staff to handwrite. So our solution, it's a close to macro-ish controlled vocabulary with metadata configuration field mapping. Yay. So what I did was I did some research into Ex Libris Alma's abilities to create macros for the metadata editor. I came up empty-handed in terms of macros. What I did find was the ability to map pre-made phrases to certain fields or combinations of fields and subfields using controlled vocabulary and some metadata configuration. So in order to do these configuration modifications, the user roles that you need include either the catalog administrator or the general system administrator, and then you're going to be doing the configuration at an institution level. So in terms of getting the configuration off the ground, number one is creating your controlled vocabulary. This is sort of just a quick pathway, but essentially you're creating your controlled vocabulary, and then you're going to fill that code into, or you're going to fill it into the fields within the metadata configuration. So you're going to take your controlled vocabulary that you created, and then you're going to fill it within metadata configuration, telling it to use that pre-assigned or pre-created wording for specific combinations of fields and subfields. And then afterwards, after you assign your controlled vocabulary within the metadata configuration, then within your metadata editor, you can use or bring up that controlled vocabulary automatically within the subfields as you bring them up. So you pretty much add your local field, add the field, and as soon as you add that subfield where you've already mapped your controlled vocabulary, you'll automatically receive this really wonderful little drop-down box of all of those pre-filled phrases, save and done. And to keep myself within my time, I actually did a demo of this pre-recorded to make sure I stayed within my time and all of that good noise. So I am going to pop out to that presentation and take it away, me from 2 weeks ago. What the purpose of this is to be able to quickly macro-ish repetitive field contents. So let's say you have a note that you repeatedly add to your bibliographic or your holding record fields. This will give you the fastest thing I can come up with to complete that, short of doing external macros. This will get it done actually in the system. So we're going to go under the ALMA configuration, and then we are going to go under resources, and then under cataloging we are going to go to the controlled vocabulary registry. And again, this is step one of creating that macro. Number one is that you have to create the controlled vocabulary, and what we're going to do is we're going to add a CV. So we're adding a new controlled vocabulary, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to add the equivalent of the 521 field, which is the target audience. Now in our network zoned environment, that's the equivalent of the 595. So I'm going to name this 595A, which is both the field and then the subfield in which I'm going to map my controlled vocabulary field to, and then from the description I'm just going to put 595A. Now under the code and description, the code is what will appear in the dropdown. So I'm going to, this is going to be the note field. And again, I'm just making some stuff up. And if you want your description is sort of something that appears in parentheses in the dropdown, and this will become more obvious once we get this all together, but you can just make it say the same thing as the description. And then once you've got your, this is my first controlled vocabulary, I'm going to add it. And now I can add multiple options for this 595A. So my first option is going to be a note that says it's required reading for friends of Angela. Now I'm also going to add another one okay, and then I'm going to add that. Then I'm going to save, and we're all set. So we have now created controlled vocabulary with the description of 595A. We've saved it. We're done here. We're going to go out. And now we're going to go under, again, I'm at the institution zone level. I'm going to go under resources, and then I'm going to go into, under cataloging, I'm going to go into the metadata configuration. And now here, depending on what field you plan to map it to, if you're mapping it to a field in your holding record, then obviously you would select Mark 21 holding. In this case, I'm going to be mapping it to a Mark 21 bibliographic field, and this is a local IZ field that I'm mapping to. So it's only going to show up in my local institution zone environment within XLibris ALMA, within our SUNY network zone environment. So now we're going under the fields area. We have to find the field that we plan to use. Actually, I wonder if I can just search for it. Can I search for it? 595 search. There we go. See, just use the search. I'm good at this. All right, so here's the field that I want to add. So again, its description is a local note. And then under the ellipses, I am going to click on Customize. Subfields. Okay, and then I'm going to go under the subfields list here. And I'm going to select A, which is, so again, I'm selecting subfield A, and then under the ellipses, you'll see there's no controlled vocabulary mapped to it. So again, I'm going to make sure I've got the right subfield here, and I'm going to click on the ellipses again, and now I'm going to click on Assign Controlled Vocabulary. Boop. Okay, so now I am in 595, subfield A, choose Controlled Vocabulary. Oh wait, no, I should just be able to pick it from the drop-down. Pardon. 595A. And there, so now when I picked it from my controlled vocabulary, it came up with my 2 controlled vocabulary notes that I set earlier. I'm going to click Assign. I'm going to save. Come on. There we go. And then this last piece is very important. Hit Deploy. And now we're done. Now, we are going to try out our brand spanking new controlled vocabulary that's been mapped to a 595. I'm going to search for a local record. Or a record in my institution zone. Okay, this one. And I'm going to edit the record. And now, when we're in the metadata editor, depending on whether this, you had mapped it to either a holdings or to a bib the bib environment, you're going to select to add the add your local note. So I'm going to do File, or excuse me, Edit, Add Local Extension, 595. And again, it shows up with that little local field note. And now I have it automatically assigns the subfield A because that's the starting one. I hit the space, and now I have 2 drop downs. And you'll notice that so it'll have the wording that is here. That's the code required reading. And then in parentheses, it gives you that little note that was in the description from our controlled vocabulary. So I'm going to click on that. And again, so what's in the description in the parentheses does not appear or fill as part of the field. Only what's in the code will actually appear in the field. And so now here it is, required reading for Friends of Angela, and then I can save it and good to go. Okay, so that is the demo. Some of the documents that I consulted, oops, not that. Some of the documents that I consulted, the main one is called Configuring Cataloging, but then there's also other ones if you want those local fields to be indexed in Primo, or to manage and display the local fields in Primo. There's those other 2 Ex Libris KB documents that are going to help you as well. And then that's really all I had. So again, thank you. My name is Angela Rhodes. I'm an associate librarian at SUNY Morrisville. Feel free to get in touch with me. There's my Twitter, Twitch, and YouTube handles. And yeah, thanks for having me.
Thank you, Angela. Our 4th and final presenter is Tony Cosgrave from Cornell University. Tony teaches course-related and credit-bearing library classes. He's been a reference and instruction librarian at Cornell since 1989. He selects materials in philosophy, psychology, and higher education. Tony has completed the ACRL Immersion Program and earned a Teaching Scholar certificate from the Cornell Center for Teaching Excellence. Tony's going to talk to us this morning about developing inclusive pedagogy. Thank you very much, Tony.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for the introduction. Let me go find my screen here. Okay, so here's the title of my talk today, Developing Inclusive Pedagogy. Now, in spring 2019, the Teaching and Learning in the Diverse Classroom was offered by the Cornell Center for Teaching Innovation. This was, these are the learning outcomes from that course, and you can see it was a framework for inclusive course design, some implications about social identities, both for students and instructors, and identifying evidence-based pedagogical strategies to support student-centered learning. The course was effective in increasing confidence for modeling inclusivity in the classroom, at least in my specific example. And there was also some discussion about evaluating curriculum and discipline to identify patterns of exclusion. And I'll talk about some of the changes that we made to our curriculum. So you can see the course is made up of these 5 different modules. It was a 5-week course, and each module lasted for a week. And you can see that there was teacher reflection, student identities, which is very insightful. In the part I'm going to focus on mainly today is module 3, but then there was also stuff on examining the curriculum and institutional change, as well as some resources. Now, each model included these different components. So there was assigned readings, of course. The center made up a number of different short video clips. There was some reflection prompts and also some discussion time. I want to take a minute and just show you a short clip of one of the videos. Students, really helpful because they share their thoughts on what they would like to see from faculty.
I think I would want a professor to know that I'm more than what you see, right? So I want a professor to know that me as Justin Liu is more than the Asian male you see in front of you, that there's a lot of other things going on. And I think we often forget that. I think in a 500-person lecture, you walk in and out of class, and probably the only time that your professor really makes contact with you sometimes in these large lectures is when you raise your hand and ask a question, right? Knowing that there are things going on in students' lives, knowing that this is probably one of the largest times of growth for us as individuals is really important. And knowing that we're affected by the things around us, we're affected by national climate, by campus climate, we're affected by things that happen in our own lives. That's all really important. Understanding that we're more than students, we're humans, is something that I hope every professor knows.
The professors that I've had felt the most welcoming from, felt myself be really open to learn and just bring all of myself in, were the professors who I knew cared about me. And
so that's just a short piece, but I thought it was very helpful to me to hear students' perspectives, which you don't always have an opportunity to hear. So I was part of a library cohort that took the class. You can see there was 4 other librarians, excuse me, and we formed our own discussion group. And even though I'd worked with these people for years, it was very nice to have the time to share thoughts and provide feedback on the readings and hear about each other's experiences in the classroom. So as you would expect, it was an asynchronous course. There were 2 informal face-to-face gatherings. As you can see on the screen here, one was just a light snacks. The other was an amazingly delicious lunch of hot Thai food. And I kind of wish I had brought some Tupperware with me because there was lots left over. So this is the reflection prompt for the section I want to focus on, the module. And so the question, of course, is why should we actively engage our students? Some talk about assessment techniques, of course. And then, you know, when you do things like this in the classroom, unexpected moments can arise. And how do you deal with the dynamics around that? And how do you facilitate those sorts of things? Now, for me, this one particular article that was part of the assigned readings for that module really struck out. This was Structure Matters. And it was a very practical list of strategies you could use to promote student engagement. And one of the pieces in that article was on building an inclusive and fair classroom community for all students. And the one section that I really focused on was to be about being explicit about promoting access and equity for all students. And so what it talked about was that not every student is, well, let me get back to that. Let me just say, so at the same time I was taking this class, I was also teaching a class. I co-teach a 1-credit half semester course that's cross-listed in Africana Studies and Latino Studies. And as you'd expect, it attracted a very and extreme diverse group of students. Now in the class, we had several classroom discussions about assigned readings. And as every teacher has experienced, you know, the first 2, we had pretty much the same students participating. And we weren't getting the kind of participation we really wanted. So that piece in that article talked about some strategy you can use and pointing out that not every student is comfortable just speaking off the cuff, and that some people would benefit more from having an opportunity to think, pair, and share, and to express their thoughts to a peer and then be more comfortable expressing it to the whole class. But they also talked about being very, very explicit with the students. So exactly what I did. I said, so we're going to do this think, pair, share. And the goal of this is to get more voices into the conversation and discussion. So I'm going to give you a chance to talk to your neighbor about the reading, share your thoughts. But then I expect to hear from people who we have not heard from before. And I want to hear more inclusive responses. And it was really a miracle. It just worked perfectly. The minute I stopped the think, pair, share and asked for comments, a Latino student, a male who had not said anything all class, spoke up. Then I had a Black male student speak up, and they both had very intelligent things to say. And then, you know, we had a lot of the regular students as well. And then just as I was about to wrap up the exercise and move on, I glanced over in the corner of the room where there was a Black woman and a Muslim woman who had been talking together. And I just casually said, would you ladies like to share anything before we move on? And to my delight, they both did. And it was really great. And I really believe that this increased the overall engagement. As the course went on, those students were more involved. They participated in discussions. They asked questions. They just seemed to be generally more engaged in the content of the course. So, you know, in addition to that, we also added a diversity statement to our syllabus. And we also made a commitment to use more diverse search examples based around the population of the students in the class, and as we're demonstrating library resources using more diverse examples. But I'm very sorry to say that the class was not offered this past semester. It was scheduled to begin. It's a half semester course, and it meets the second half just as the courses were suspended on campus. And since the course had not even started, it was decided that it was best just to cancel it for this time. But we are looking forward to offering this course next spring. There was also a very nice selection of readings that were available for that. And I've got a tiny URL you can use there to access the readings. There's just a page full of really great content if you're interested in reading about more on this topic. And that's all I have to present. I guess it's time for our questions.
Thank you, Tony. We have a question in the Q&A. We have a question in the Q&A from Ryan, or for Ryan, sorry, from Dave Odom, who asks, is the form tool for creating finding aids the EAD editor? Smiley face.
So the editor, which is kind of a clever name for a form tool that edits EAD, is our existing form tool. So that's been the tool that's been used in Empire Archival Discovery Cooperative since the very beginning of the project. But we've kind of hit up against a number of the limitations of that form tool. So we're in the process of replacing that current form tool with a new one that's based in Archipelago. Archipelago has a number of features that will hopefully make the process a little smoother and also make it actually work, because parts of it are broken currently. That being said, we are still supporting the current version. So if you are interested in, starting tomorrow to work on EAD finding aids, we would be happy to help you through the process of learning how to use the editor. So I hope that answers your question. If it doesn't, I'd be happy to talk more.
Yep, we have a few more minutes, so go ahead and enter your questions in the Q&A box. And in the meantime, I have a question for Sarah. Sarah, we're always interested in increasing attendance at our sessions.
Mhm.
And I was interested in the fact that you had 4 attendees at your first Creative Commons OER session, and the second one exploded. And I'm wondering what advertising efforts you undertook to increase participation. It was for faculty, right?
Yeah,
In those sessions.
I think tapping into Faculty Workshop Day was a big thing. It's heavily advertised in and of itself. So I think that was a key thing. There's just a lot of advertisement with that. So we knew we wanted to get in there and do our workshop as part of that day. And we still didn't know how many people would sign up for our session, but yeah, we were really pleased with the attendance. So, and we hope that, like I said, tying it into the OER, people know OER, but the Creative Commons thing is still a little new to everyone. So I think, like I said, the rebranding was definitely key, I think, to getting people in there.
Great, thank you. We have a question in the Q&A from Nikki Lurchik for Tony. Tony, the Structure Matters article looks to be biology instruction focused. Is it easily applied to other topics?
Yes, it is actually, because my course has nothing to do with biology, but it had a lot of really down-to-earth practical techniques, and so it's easily applied to other disciplines.
Great. We're always looking for all the tips and tricks we can find. All right. Thank you all so much for attending our lightning talk round. We have conference lunch coming up, and there are virtual rooms if you'd like to socialize during your lunch. Following lunch at 1 o'clock, we have the annual meeting of the SUNY Librarians Association. So if you're not a SUNYLA member, you can extend your lunch quite a bit there. And at 1:30, we have a presentation from one of our conference sponsors, EBSCO. Here on channel 5, we have lightning talks again up at 2 o'clock. So if you'd like to join us then, you will have 4 more lightning talk presenters. Otherwise, I'm sure there are 4 other wonderful presentations going on the other channels for SUNYLA. Thanks so much for joining us, and have a great conference, everybody.